Welcome to part 3 of Onshape for Makers, where we are creating models for the shop. This is part 3 of Onshape configuration. In part 1 we created this slipcase using these variables to control the dimensions, wall thickness, the radius, etc. In part 2 we created a configuration checklist. You pick the size, it will fill in the dimensions based on a table. In part 3, we will look at a checklist to option features, and in this case we will put vent holes in the ends of the case and option them with a check mark. Okay, this is pretty much where we left off last time. What we want to do this time is add a feature to the list that will create a hole in the center of each end and make that hole optional based on the configuration, and to control the configuration we're going to use a check mark. So let's start by putting a hole. We'll pull up the hole tool, go to a simple hole, and the diameter of the hole will be the same as the wall thickness that we defined in the global variables in part 1 of this thing. Where the hole goes, I could either have made a sketch and put a point and then come back and use the point, or I can simply use a make connector. And make connectors will find all kinds of edges, corners, but it will also find the center of a face, which is what we want in this case. So we will put center of faces in there and green check mark, and we have 2 holes, and the holes are the diameter of the wall. Being a small case, the wall thickness is 2 millimeters. If we go to a medium case, it's a 3 or 4 millimeter wall, so the hole is bigger. Oh, and the one thing I added, so everybody would be happy, is I added a soapbox. And the soapbox is simply changing the configuration table to add a new set of numbers to make the slipcase into a soapbox. Whatever. Anyway, the way this works, Onshape reads the feature list and builds the model. Onshape doesn't store the model. That allows us to suppress steps in the feature list during the build so they don't execute. For example, if we come and right-click and select Suppress, when Onshape rebuilds the model, it will come down and skip the hole. If it is unsuppressed, it will execute the hole. It would be the same if I had, let's see, what can I do right quick? If I can suppress the fillets, we suddenly get square ends. If I unsuppress the fillets, they start executing it. That feature will execute in the build list, and we will get the fillet. This is the way we control what we get and what we don't get. For a configuration, we can do an add configuration. Except I clicked the wrong button, my bad. I can add configuration input of checkbox. Checkboxes have names. This one's going to be named vent hole. Thought that was so catchy. I'm going to configure features, and this is what features do you want tied to this configuration. I'm going to select it, and you get a yellow modal reminder up here that anything you check you can configure. In this case, we're going to configure the hole tool callout. When you build a hole tool, a hole in feature, you get a whole bunch of parameters. One of them is called suppress and unsuppress, which, by the way, is the same thing you're using when you're right-clicking and doing suppress and unsuppress. So if I unsuppress the hole, it will not show. So I'm going to click unsuppressed. It will add it to the configurable features list. That's easy for you to say. And then I will say done. Those are all the features I want attached to this check mark that just appeared over here. When the check mark is checked, I want it to be unsuppressed. When it's not checked, I want it to be suppressed. This is backwards logic, but it really does work. So you uncheck this, lose the hole, check the vent hole, you get the hole. And that basically is what you're doing here. It's not a big feature here, but it's a big feature on complex parts when you want to add or take away features, adjustments, mounting holes, bolt holes, whatever you've got in your big parts. When you go to assembly and you create an assembly, we can insert into the assembly a small with a vent hole parts over here. And if you look, they'll have vent holes with them. If I uncheck this and say generate and click again and pull over, these don't have vent holes, which means our code is working. That is basically checkmark configuration for Onshape. It's a great idea and easy to use. Talk to y'all later.